Welcome to the shadowy side of Hollywood's glittering golden age. We all see the perfect smiles and glamorous premieres. But what about the secret deals made behind closed studio doors? For decades, wild stories have swirled about how some of the biggest stars, both men and women, got their big break. Rumors whisper that for a few, talent alone wasn't enough. The real key to fame might have been a secret friendship with a powerful director. This is the controversial, untold story of the choices some made on the path to becoming a legend. 1. Rock Hudson, the manufactured heartthrob. Rock Hudson was the man every woman in America wanted to marry. Tall, square-jawed, devastatingly handsome, he was the living, breathing definition of a leading man. He sold out theaters, graced the covers of every fan magazine, and was paired on screen with the most beautiful women in Hollywood. But behind that flawless image was a secret so explosive that it could have ended his career overnight and burned the entire studio system to the ground. The truth was that Rock Hudson's romantic life looked nothing like what the studio publicity department wanted you to believe. Rock was a man who preferred the private company of other men, and in the brutally unforgiving Hollywood of the 1950s, that single fact was a death sentence for any career. The studios knew it, his agents knew it, and most dangerously, certain powerful directors knew it too. The story that has echoed through Hollywood back channels for decades is this. A tremendously influential director, a man who himself kept his own private desires carefully hidden from the public, spotted Rock Hudson before he was anybody. He saw the raw material, that jawline, those shoulders, that effortless charm, and he understood exactly what could be sculpted from it. But his interest was not purely professional. Those who were in the room whisper that the director's fascination with Rock was deeply, unmistakably personal. What followed was an arrangement that both men understood without ever having to spell it out. The director became Rock's private mentor, his acting coach, his voice trainer, and his guide through the treacherous maze of studio politics. He taught Rock how to lower his voice, how to move on camera, how to command a scene with a single look. More critically, he opened doors that would have remained permanently shut for a nobody from Winnetka, Illinois. Suddenly, Rock was reading for leading roles. Suddenly, he was being handed scripts that established actors would have fought over. 2. Marilyn Monroe, the blonde sacrifice. Before the world knew her as Marilyn Monroe, she was just Norma Jean Mortensen, a lonely, ambitious girl from a broken home who wanted nothing more than to escape her painful past and become someone who mattered. She had the face, the figure, and a desperate, almost frightening hunger for fame. But in a Hollywood overflowing with beautiful, desperate girls, Norma Jean needed something more than beauty. She needed a patron, she needed a protector, and according to the whispers that have never fully died, she found one at a staggering personal cost. The rumors that cling to Marilyn's early years are among the most disturbing in all of Hollywood history. A powerful and well-established director reportedly took notice of the young Norma Jean at a time when she was still a nameless model doing small catalog work. He saw what the camera saw, that luminous, almost otherworldly quality she carried. And he made her an offer that was less an invitation and more a transaction. He would coach her privately. He would make phone calls on her behalf. He would get her into audition rooms she had no business being in. He would introduce her to the producers and studio chiefs who could change her life with a single signature. But this generosity came wrapped in expectation. Those who worked on studio lots during those years recall that the director and the aspiring starlet were seen leaving private dinners together, spending long evenings in offices, after everyone else had gone home, and sharing a closeness that was impossible to explain away as mere professional mentorship. Norma Jean transformed. Her hair went platinum. Her voice dropped to that famous breathy whisper. Her walk became the most imitated stride in cinema history. She became Marilyn Monroe, a goddess manufactured by ambition and shaped by compromise. The director's fingerprints were all over the creation, even if his name never appeared on the credits. It was, by all accounts, a transaction as old as Hollywood itself. Her private company, her time, her attention, exchanged for his connections, his influence, and his willingness to stake his reputation on a girl nobody else believed in. 3. Cary Grant, the reinvented man. The Cary Grant the world adored, that impossibly suave, quick-witted, impeccably dressed gentleman, was a complete invention. He did not exist before Hollywood created him. The man who would become Cary Grant was born Archibald Leach in Bristol, England, into grinding poverty and family turmoil. His mother was institutionalized when he was young, and his father largely abandoned him. To survive, young Archie ran away and joined a traveling acrobatic troupe, eventually making his way to America with little more than a handsome face and a willingness to do whatever it took to escape his past. It was in the New York theater world that Archie Leach met the man who would reshape his entire existence. An older, established, and extremely well-connected stage director took an immediate and intense interest in the young performer. This man was known in private circles for surrounding himself with attractive young men, offering them guidance, housing, and career advancement in exchange for devoted companionship. Archie and this director entered into a relationship that was remarkably intimate by any standard. They lived together. They traveled together across Europe. The director financed Archie's transformation, new clothes, elocution lessons, etiquette training, everything required to sand away the rough edges of a working-class English boy and replace them with the polished veneer of aristocratic sophistication. He didn't just help Archie get roles, he fundamentally rebuilt the man from the ground up, creating a persona so convincing that eventually even Archie himself seemed to forget where the performance ended and the real person began. 4. Greta Garbo, the director's obsession. Greta Garbo was not merely a movie star. She was an almost supernatural presence on screen, remote, untouchable, radiating a melancholy beauty that made audiences feel they were witnessing something sacred. But that iconic mystique was not an accident. It was carefully, almost obsessively, engineered by one man. The director, Moritz Stiller, who discovered Garbo in Sweden and became so consumed by her that he bent his entire career around making her immortal. Stiller's fixation on Garbo went far beyond anything resembling a normal professional relationship. He controlled what she wore, how she spoke, who she associated with, and how she presented herself to the world. He demanded that studios cast her as his condition for directing their films. He threw legendary tantrums when anyone interfered with his vision for her. On set, he directed her with a ferocity and intimacy that made everyone around them deeply uncomfortable. Behind closed doors, their dynamic was reportedly even more consuming. Stiller treated Garbo as his personal creation, his living masterpiece, and he expected total access to her time, her energy, and her emotional world in return. She gave him what he demanded, not out of passion, many believed, but out of a cold understanding that this man held the keys to everything she wanted. Their bond was less a romance than a pact, his obsessive genius in exchange for her absolute surrender to his artistic control. 5. James Dean, the rebel's shortcut. James Dean exploded onto the screen like a lit match thrown into gasoline. He was raw, electric, and heartbreakingly vulnerable. In just 3 films, he became the voice of an entire restless generation. But the story of how James Dean got that first crucial break is one of the most whispered about tales in Hollywood history, and it paints a far more complicated picture than the legend of a pure rebel genius. Before Hollywood, Dean was a struggling young actor in New York, handsome and talented, but utterly unknown. He fell into the orbit of a prominent theater director, a man with enormous influence, impeccable taste, and a well-known appetite for the company of beautiful young men. This director saw in Dean something explosive and immediately drew him into his inner circle. Their friendship escalated with suspicious speed. Within weeks, they were inseparable. The director lavished attention on Dean, hosted him at private gatherings with the most powerful people in the entertainment industry, and spoke about him to anyone who would listen with an enthusiasm that was hard to categorize as purely professional. Dean, for his part, played the game with remarkable skill for someone so young. He understood what was being offered and what was expected in return. 6. Marlene Dietrich, forged in desire. Marlene Dietrich was a force that refused to be controlled by anyone, except perhaps the one man who created her legend. Director Josef von Sternberg discovered Dietrich in Berlin and became so utterly consumed by her that he risked his career, his marriage, and his reputation to make her the biggest star in the world. Von Sternberg did not simply direct Dietrich, he sculpted her. He designed her lighting personally, spending hours positioning every shadow on her face. He chose her costumes, her angles, her expressions. He fought viciously with studio executives who questioned his choices, once reportedly threatening to walk off a picture entirely if a single frame of Dietrich's footage was altered without his approval. Their private relationship was volcanic. Those who worked with them described an atmosphere of suffocating intensity, jealous confrontations, tearful reconciliations, long private meetings behind locked doors that left both of them visibly shaken. Von Sternberg made no secret of the fact that his feelings for Dietrich transcended the professional. He worshipped her with a fervor that bordered on religious mania, and she permitted that worship because it served her ambition. 7. Tyrone Power, the pretty boy's bargain. Tyrone Power possessed what might have been the most beautiful male face ever captured on celluloid. His features were so symmetrical, so impossibly refined, that cameramen reportedly gasped the first time they saw him through a lens. But beauty alone does not explain the speed of his ascent. Tyrone went from total obscurity to headlining the most expensive productions at 20th Century Fox in what seemed like the blink of an eye, and the machinery behind that acceleration has long been a subject of dark speculation. An older, immensely powerful studio director reportedly took a consuming personal interest in Tyrone almost immediately. This director had the authority to green-light productions, assign leading roles, and make or break careers with a single decision. He and Tyrone began appearing together at exclusive private gatherings, the kind of intimate Hollywood parties where deals were made and futures were decided over cocktails and closed doors. The correlation between their private association and Tyrone's professional trajectory was impossible for industry insiders to ignore. Every time they were seen together, a new starring role seemed to follow. Tyrone was cast in lavish adventure films and prestigious dramas that established actors twice his age would have traded everything for. The whispers grew louder with each new casting announcement, and while no one dared speak openly, everyone in Hollywood understood the arithmetic. The director's personal favor was the currency, and Tyrone's companionship was the payment. 8. Barbara Stanwyck, the survivor's calculation. Barbara Stanwyck came from nothing. Orphaned young, raised in foster homes, hardened by the streets of Brooklyn before she was old enough to drive. By the time she reached Hollywood, she had already survived enough to understand one fundamental truth about the world. Nobody gives you anything for free. A celebrated director known for his intensely personal relationships with his leading ladies spotted Stanwyck performing on a New York stage and decided immediately that she was going to be his next project. He brought her to Hollywood, installed her in a leading role, and began spending conspicuous amounts of private time shaping her technique, her image, and her screen presence. Their closeness became the subject of immediate gossip on the lot. Stanwyck was nobody's fool. She recognized the arrangement for what it was and entered it with her eyes wide open. She gave the director her time, her trust, and her companionship. He gave her the career she had clawed her way across the country to claim. Their alliance was built not on naivety, but on mutual understanding. Two ambitious people exchanging what each had for what each wanted. It was transactional, it was controversial, and it worked. Stanwyck became one of the most respected actresses in Hollywood history, and she never apologized to anyone for how she got there. 9. Montgomery Clift, the beautiful prisoner. Montgomery Clift was perhaps the most gifted actor of his generation. Sensitive, searingly intelligent, and tormented by private demons that the public never fully understood. His path to stardom began when he was discovered as a teenager by an influential stage director who recognized his extraordinary talent and immediately claimed him as a protégé. This director did not simply mentor young Monty. He absorbed him. They shared living quarters. The director managed Monty's schedule, his finances, his social life, and his career decisions with a totality that left almost no room for independence. He used every connection he had to place Monty in the finest stage productions, and when the time came for Hollywood, he orchestrated the transition with the precision of a military campaign. Those who knew them described the relationship as deeply complex, a tangled fusion of artistic partnership, emotional dependency, and something far more intimate that neither man ever publicly acknowledged. Monty's brilliance was undeniable, but his access to the roles that showcased that brilliance was entirely controlled by a man whose investment in him was profoundly personal. The result was a career of staggering artistic achievement built on a private foundation that Monty could never fully escape, and that may have contributed to the personal anguish that followed him for the rest of his tragically short life. 10. Joan Crawford, the climber who never looked down. Joan Crawford did not stumble into fame. She seized it with both hands and refused to let go, even when the climb drew blood. Born Lucille Fay LeSueur in San Antonio, Texas, she arrived in Hollywood as a dancer with ferocious ambition and an almost supernatural understanding of power. Who had it, how to get close to it, and what it cost to keep it. A top studio director spotted the young Lucille and saw in her not just beauty, but that rarest of Hollywood commodities, the willingness to do absolutely anything to win. He gave her a new name, a new look, and a new identity. He cast her in a starring role that launched her into the public consciousness. And their partnership both on screen and behind the scenes, became one of the most talked about open secrets in Hollywood. Crawford never hid the fact that she had traded on every asset she possessed to reach the top. She was unflinchingly honest, in private at least, about the calculations she had made and the compromises she had accepted. The director provided the opportunities, the protection, and the industry muscle that a woman from her background could never have accessed alone. She provided him with loyalty, devotion, and an attentiveness to his personal needs that went far beyond any professional obligation. Their alliance was a masterclass in Hollywood's unwritten rules, the ones that never appeared in any contract but governed the industry more completely than any legal document ever could. Crawford climbed to the very pinnacle of stardom, and she did it by understanding a truth that many of her peers were too proud or too frightened to accept. In Hollywood, everything is a negotiation, and the only sin is pretending otherwise. The golden age of Hollywood was built on dazzling dreams, but also on hidden sacrifices. We can never know the full truth behind these old rumors. Were these friendships simply strong mentorships, or were they secret deals for fame? Every star paid a price for their spotlight. For some, that price may have been a piece of their private heart. It reminds us that behind the perfect movie magic, Hollywood has always been a complicated place where ambition and desire often meet. The legacy is the film, but the real story remains in the shadows. Thanks for watching.